Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fact Fragment, the show that takes all those crazy research papers and turns them into something you can actually, understand. And today we're going deep, deep, deep into something I bet you're looking at right now. Yep, that's right, it's screen time.
Ooh,
I
exciting.
know, right? We've got some super interesting research on how much time people are spending on screens, what it's doing to our brains and bodies. And get this,
What?
even how those meditation apps everyone's using play into all of this.
I'm intrigued already.
I know, right? So to kick things off, what's the big picture here? How much
Mm.
time are we talking globally? On average, how long are people staring at screens every single day?
Well, the latest data says it's a whopping 6 hours and 40 minutes.
Whoa, hold up, 6 hours and 40 minutes.
Uh-huh.
That's like almost a full workday.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, I honestly thought it would be less, with people talk about digital detox and all.
Yeah, you'd think so, but the interesting thing is this number has been going up. Yeah, back in 2013, the average was about 30 minutes less.
So we're basically adding an extra half hour of screen time to our lives every year.
It seems that way.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to process. Where does it all go? What are we actually doing for almost 7 hours a day?
Right. Makes you think.
Yeah, I mean, I know I spend a good chunk of time on social media, but I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. It totally varies, like by country, age, lifestyle, all sorts of things.
The whole big complex picture.
Exactly, but these global averages give us a good, starting point.
Okay, so we know the average is 6 hours and 40 minutes, but I bet some countries are way ahead, blowing that average out of the water.
Oh, you bet. The screen time champion, drumroll please, is South Africa,
Oh, wow, really?
with a mind-blowing 9 hours and 24 minutes per day.
9 hours. That's more than some people sleep.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Wow. Okay, so South Africa's in the lead.
Mm-hmm.
But who else is up there? Are there any other, screen time super users?
Definitely. Close behind are the Philippines, Brazil, and Colombia, all clocking in over 8 hours a day.
Okay, so a lot of those are, warmer climate countries. Makes me wonder if that plays a role, people being outside less, maybe.
Could be. That's something to think about, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So where does the U.S. fall in all this? Are we up there with the champions?
Above average, I'm afraid to say.
Uh-huh.
Americans spend about 7 hours and 3 minutes each day.
That's a lot closer to the global average than I expected.
Right. And it's split pretty evenly between mobile and computer use.
Really? I thought we'd be more, mobile heavy, with everyone always on their phones.
It is interesting, right?
So are we all doomed to become, screen zombies then?
Not necessarily. There's a glimmer of hope in the data.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, some countries are actually seeing a decrease in screen time.
Really? Who are these screen time rebels?
Uh-huh. Not quite rebels, but places like Taiwan, South Korea, even Canada are showing small decreases.
Wow, okay, so maybe there's hope for us yet.
We can hope. Now, since we're talking about, different groups, let's look at age.
Yeah, because it feels like kids these days are basically born with a phone in their hand, right?
You're not wrong. Research shows that almost half of all babies, we're talking 0 to 2 years old, are already interacting with smartphones.
Seriously, what are babies even doing on smartphones?
It just shows you how much screens are a part of our world now, even from super young age.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing. So what about teenagers then? They're the ones who always get blamed for being glued to their phones.
No, they definitely spend a lot of time online.
How much are we talking exactly?
Gen Z is averaging around 9 hours a day.
9 hours. That's basically their whole day outside of school.
It's a lot, right? And to break it down, U.S. teens are spending over 3 hours just watching TV and videos.
3 hours just
Uh-huh.
on videos.
Yep. And that's not even counting all the time they spend on games and social media.
Wow. I mean, I remember thinking my old Game Boy was a time suck back in the day, but this is next level.
And here's another interesting thing. U.S. teens from lower-income families spend over 2 hours more on screens than their wealthier peers.
Whoa, hold on. 2 hours more. That's a huge difference.
It is, and it makes you think about all the factors involved, like access to resources, types of activities they do after school, even just the environment at home.
So screen time isn't just about personal choices. It's tied to bigger social and economic stuff too.
Exactly. It's way more complex than it seems on the surface.
Okay, so we've talked about how much time people are spending. But now, let's get real. What's all this screen time doing to us? Is it all bad news?
Well, it's important to look at both sides,
Okay, so let's start with the negative. What are the downsides?
Well, one big thing is that research suggests less than half of our screen time is actually productive.
So all that scrolling and liking and whatever, it's not really helping us get things done.
Not really, and it's something a lot of people struggle with, especially parents who worry about their kids' screen time.
Yeah, makes sense. So what are some of the, actual negative effects that researchers are linking to screen time?
One of the biggest is sleep deprivation.
Oh, I've definitely felt that. The blue light from our devices messes with our sleep, right?
Totally. And then there's the link to obesity, since screen time tends to be pretty sedentary.
True, true.
And some studies even point to a possible connection between screen time and a higher risk of diabetes.
Yikes. Okay, not good.
Yeah.
So is all screen time bad then? Is there no hope?
Not necessarily. There's good news, too.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me the good news.
Well, one interesting finding is that there's no strong link between screen time and bad grades.
Really? I would have thought all those hours watching YouTube instead of studying would have, a negative impact.
Apparently not. And here's another positive finding. Limiting social media to just 30 minutes a day has been shown to actually boost well-being.
So maybe it's not about getting rid of screens completely, but more about finding a healthy balance, right? Like using them in ways that actually benefit us.
Exactly. And that's where the whole mindfulness movement comes in, which is probably why we're seeing this boom in meditation apps.
The meditation app craze. It seems like everyone's using them these days. What's to do with that? Why are they so popular all of a sudden?
Well, the numbers are pretty impressive. These apps are getting millions of downloads and generating tons of revenue.
So people are definitely willing to pay for a little peace of mind, huh?
It seems that way. And it's not just hype. There's actually science backing it up.
Oh. Tell me more.
Studies show that meditation can actually change the brain, potentially even counteracting some of those negative screen time effects we talked about.
Wait, hold up. Meditation can change our brains, physically rewire them.
Well, it's not like flipping a switch, but there's evidence that it can impact brain structure and function in some pretty amazing ways.
Okay, that's fascinating. So what's actually happening in our brains when we meditate? I know you love the science, so break it down for me.
So what's cool is that meditation affects multiple brain regions. Like, we see changes in the amygdala, which deals with emotions like fear and anxiety, and the prefrontal cortex, which handles things like decision-making and self-control, also shows increased activity.
Those are some important brain areas.
They are. And then there's the hippocampus, which is key for learning and memory.
So it's like a full-on brain workout, huh?
You could say that. But it's not just about individual regions, it's also about the connections between them. Meditation strengthens those communication pathways in the brain, which leads to better overall function.
Okay, so how does all this tie back to, the screen time stuff we were talking about earlier?
Well, remember all those negative effects, the sleep disruptions, potential for addiction, the impact on attention span.
Yeah.
Meditation can actually help with all of that. It strengthens the very brain regions that are being challenged by excessive screen time.
So it's like a mental counterbalance to all the digital stimulation.
Exactly. It gives your brain the tools to handle the constant barrage of information and stimulation that comes with all the screen time.
That's pretty amazing. But before we get too carried away with the power of meditation, I want to bring it back to screen time for a sec. What are some of the key takeaways from all these stats and studies? What does this all mean for the average person who's probably listening to this while scrolling through their phone right now?
Right. Well, it seems like screen time is kind of a double-edged sword, you know?
How so?
On the one hand, it's this powerful tool that connects us to information, entertainment, each other.
But there's a but coming, right?
Yeah, there's a but.
I knew it.
So what's the but?
The but is that too much of a good thing can become a problem pretty quickly. We need to be mindful of how we're using screens and make sure they're not taking over our lives.
So, what are some practical things people can do to find that sweet spot, using screens effectively without all the negative consequences?
Well, first and foremost, awareness is key.
Okay, so how do we become more aware? Start by tracking your screen time.
Okay, track it, and then what?
See where all those hours are actually going.
So, are you spending most of your time on productive tasks or just getting sucked into the endless scroll?
Exactly. It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed.
Oh, I like that. So track your screen time, figure out where it's going, and then?
Then you can start setting some boundaries.
Boundaries, okay.
Maybe you decide to limit social media to certain times of day or create phone-free zones in your house.
Like no phones at the dinner table, that kind of stuff.
And maybe dust off that old alarm clock instead of relying on your phone to wake you up.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm definitely guilty of using my phone as an alarm.
And don't forget about those mindfulness techniques we talked about. Even a few minutes of meditation each day can make a big difference in how you manage stress and stay focused.
Yeah, especially in a world that's constantly vying for our attention.
Totally.
So it sounds like the key is not to become anti-screen, but to become pro-mindfulness.
I like that. It's all about balance.
This is all super interesting, but I have to ask, what stood out to you the most in all this screen time research? Like, was there anything that really surprised you?
For me, it was that stat about teens from lower income families spending so much more time on screens than their wealthier peers. It really highlights that screen time isn't just an individual thing, it's a societal thing too.
That's a great point. It makes you think about like how important it is to give all young people the tools and opportunities they need to thrive in a digital world,
Yeah.
regardless of their background.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really makes you think about like all the different ways screen time can play out in people's lives.
It's true. Like, are some people just, I don't know, more wired to be affected by all this screen time than others?
That's a really good question. And you know what? Personality probably plays a big role in how we interact with technology.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Like,
sense.
think about someone who's super impulsive, right? They might find it harder to resist, like the pull of social media or video games compared to someone who's more, thoughtful and deliberate.
Right, right, totally. And what about lifestyle? Like, I imagine someone who works from home has a totally different relationship with screens than someone who has a more active job that doesn't involve as much tech.
Oh, absolutely. Their baseline screen time is going to be completely different. So, yeah, the impact's going to vary too.
Hmm. So it's not just about how much time you spend on screens, but also like the context of your life and all that.
Exactly. And even within those categories, like work from home versus not, there are still nuances.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. So, say you have two people who both work remotely, right?
Mm.
One's really good about taking breaks, getting outside, all that. And the other one's basically glued to their computer all day long.
Ah, I see. So even though they both work from home, their experience with screen time could be totally different.
Exactly. It's like this big puzzle with tons of pieces, and everyone's puzzle looks a little bit different.
I love that analogy, the screen time puzzle.
Right. So we have to look beyond just the averages and think about all those individual factors that could be at play.
Okay, so we've talked about like the potential downsides of all this screen time.
Yeah.
But is there a flip side? Like, can all those hours spent in the digital world actually be good for us in some ways?
With all the concerns we've talked about, it's easy to forget that screens aren't inherently bad.
True.
They can be amazing tools for learning, connecting, even boosting our well-being, depending on how we use them, of course.
Right. It's not about the screens themselves, it's about how we use them.
Exactly. Think about all the incredible educational resources available online.
Okay, yeah, like what?
Kids can learn about anything these days, from, I don't know, ancient history to astrophysics, all with just a few clicks.
It's true. The access to information is mind-blowing. And it's not just for kids. I'm constantly learning new things online, like through those online courses, documentaries, even just following experts on social media.
Me too. It's like having a world-class education right there in your pocket.
I know, right? It's amazing. And beyond learning, there's also the whole connection piece. Like, screens let us stay in touch with people who live far away, build communities around shared interests, even find support during tough times.
Absolutely. That's one of the most powerful things about technology. It can bridge those gaps.
I totally agree. I've made some of my closest friends online, people I would have never met otherwise.
That's so cool. And it's not just about making new connections, it's about maintaining existing ones too.
Right, like staying in touch with family and friends who live far away.
Exactly. And let's not forget about all the apps and platforms designed specifically to improve our well-being.
Oh yeah, beyond those meditation apps, there are like fitness trackers, sleep trackers, even apps that help you manage stress and anxiety.
Right. It's like having a whole wellness team in your pocket.
That's a great way to put it. So it seems like the key is to be intentional, right? Like focus on the tools and resources that actually enhance our lives.
Exactly. Instead of just mindlessly scrolling through social media, we can choose to engage with content that educates, inspires, connects us with others in meaningful ways.
So it's about taking back control, being proactive instead of reactive.
Yes. I love that. It's all about empowerment and making conscious choices about how we want to spend our time and energy.
Okay, so let's talk practical tips.
Yeah.
How can people actually start making those more conscious choices? Where do we even begin?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, tracking your screen time and setting boundaries is a great first step.
Right, because you can't change what you don't track.
Exactly. But beyond that, it can be helpful to really think about your values and priorities.
Values. Okay, I'm intrigued. How do values come into play here?
Well, think about what's truly important to you. Is it spending quality time with loved ones,
Yeah.
learning new skills, being physically active? Once you've identified those core values, you can make sure your screen time aligns with them.
Ah, I see. So, like, if connecting with loved ones is a top priority, maybe you schedule regular video chats with family and friends.
Exactly. Or you could create a private online group where you can share updates and photos and stuff.
And if learning is important, you could dedicate some screen time each week to online courses or documentaries.
Perfect. And if physical activity is high on your list, maybe it's time to, put down the phone and go for a walk.
Right, so it's not about being anti-screen, it's about making sure your screen time is actually serving you and not the other way around.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
This is making me think about, like, how different people approach screen time based on their personality.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, like, some people are super organized
Yeah.
and they have, like, strict schedules for when they check their phone or use social media. And then others are more, I don't know, free-flowing and they just kind of go with the flow.
That's a great point. It's like there's no one right way to do it. It's all about finding what works for you and your personality.
Totally. And it's probably an ongoing process too, right? Like, what works for you now might change as your life changes.
Oh, for sure. It's not about finding the perfect solution. It's about constantly adapting and adjusting as you go.
I like that. It's about being flexible and mindful.
Exactly. And speaking of mindfulness, let's talk about parents for a second.
Oh, yeah. The parental dilemma of the digital age. How much screen time is too much for kids? How do you set healthy boundaries without becoming like the tech police?
Right. These are the questions that keep parents up at night.
And unfortunately, there's no easy answer, is there?
Not really, but I think the same principles we've been discussing apply here too.
Okay, so like what? Awareness, intentionality, all that.
Exactly. Start by having open and honest conversations with your kids about screen time.
Oh, good point. Communication is key.
Right. Explain why it's important to find a balance and even involve them in setting some ground rules together.
Like a family screen time contract or something.
That's a great idea. And remember, it's not just about setting rules, it's also about modeling those healthy habits yourself.
Oh, for sure. Kids are always watching.
Right. If you're constantly on your phone, they're going to notice. But if they see you prioritizing things like family time, being active, putting your phone away during meals.
They're much more likely to develop those healthy habits themselves.
Exactly. It's all about leading by example.
And I'm sure it takes patience, right? Like, no one's perfect. We're all figuring this out as we go.
Totally. And the good news is there are tons of resources out there to help parents navigate the digital world with their kids.
Like what?
There are books, articles, online communities, even parent coaching programs.
So you don't have to go it alone.
Exactly. There's a whole support system out there.
Okay, wow. I think we've covered just about every angle of this screen time thing, haven't we?
I think so too. We've talked about global trends, the potential impacts, individual variations, the surprising benefits, even the parental perspective.
It's been a truly comprehensive deep dive.
It really has. And I hope our listeners are feeling informed and empowered to make more conscious choices about their own digital lives.
Me too. But before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with one final thought to ponder.
Ooh, I love a good cliffhanger.
So we've talked a lot about how screen time can impact our brains, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about its impact on our relationships?
Oh, that's a big one.
Like, are we trading real-life connection for virtual ones? Is our constant need to, like, document and share every moment taking away from actually experiencing it in the present?
Those are some deep questions, and honestly, not easy ones to answer.
It's definitely something to think about as we continue to navigate this increasingly digital world.
Absolutely. It's a conversation worth having.
Yeah, it really makes you think, huh?
Definitely food for thought.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the wild world of screen time.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has. And, we've explored the latest research, uncovered some pretty crazy stats, and hopefully, gotten people thinking about their own screen time habits.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's a topic that affects all of us, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And as always, we want to hear from you, our amazing listeners.
Yes. Tell us what you think.
Like, what stood out to you most from today's episode? What are your struggles with managing screen time? Or maybe you've got some awesome tips to share, things that have worked for you.
We're all ears.
Yeah, share your thoughts and experiences on our social media channels. We're always up for a good conversation.
And who knows, maybe your insight will inspire a future Fact Fragment episode.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, this is all about sharing knowledge, supporting each other, and, navigating this digital world together with a little more awareness and intention.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So until next time, keep those brains buzzing, stay curious, and remember to put down those screens every now and then and, enjoy the beauty of the real world.
We'll see you out there in the real world.
Or maybe back here in the virtual one for our next deep dive.
Either way, we'll be here, breaking down complex research into easy-to-understand insights.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Fact Fragment.